And in terms of overwhelm, one of the old ideas was that we really can't carry the major dramas and the major tragedies and the major disturbances in the world. We can't simply carry them. And even though speaking to other people is really valuable and can be a talking cure, that doesn't do it completely either. And so the old idea was that we put those things we cannot carry otherwise into a song. And so then different cultures have many songs, and often songs with real intention in them. And the song that I'm going to sing comes from West Africa, from Burkina Faso, from the Dogara tribe. I learned it from Malidoma Somé. May he rest in peace. And this is an earth song, a song that the earth keepers in the tribe would sing. And being an earth song is used to bring everyone together. That's one of the functions of earth energy. But also, it's a way of protecting oneself, because the earth has protective energy that it offers for free, but also a way of giving to the earth things that we can't carry. And this is an easy song to learn. It only has one word in it, and the word is azima. And the meaning of azima is several things, but one of them is gratitude to the earth for supporting us and supporting life. Another is respect to the earth. And another is that the word azima is an opening or a connection to a way of grounding, because the earth is a grounding energy as well. So the song goes like this. Azima wo e, azima wo, azima wo, azima wo, azima wo, azima wo e. Azima wo, 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 azima wo. So if in singing it you imagine the earth being below our feet and not being an inert object, but being an essential living thing that is trying to give us energy, you can sing down to the earth, down through one's own body to the earth, and it's a way of grounding oneself. It's a way of perhaps dealing with overwhelm. Azima wo e, azima wo, azima wo, azima wo, azima wo. It's the kind of song you can sing while you're by yourself and feeling isolated, alone, or potentially overwhelmed. It's a really powerful song to sing with other people. And in the tradition of it, you sing it for a very long time. So you begin to dissolve some of the fears and anxieties, and even dissolve some of the ego attitudes that keep us trapped in certain feelings and certain conditions. And the next thing, you find yourself dropping further into the body and connecting further to the body of the earth. And all of a sudden, there can be moments of wholeness, moments of steadiness, moments of grounding. And so I'm offering that. It was offered to me and given to me with the idea that it should be shared. So I'm offering it here. And in these old songs, at least the way I've learned it, every mistake is a new style. So don't worry about getting it so-called right. The idea is to be in the sense of it and in the feeling of it. So anyway, Azima. So we're living in this kind of time that's a wave of tragedies and disasters, betrayals, and upheavals of all kinds. And And it's interesting, the word overwhelm expresses that. And it's an interesting word because, some words sound like what they mean and mean what they say. And overwhelm literally means to knock over or turn upside down. And the part of it, whelm, is an old word which on its own can mean to be swamped or submerged completely, as if pulled down by a great wave. And that's what can happen to us at any time at any day in the world the way it is now, because of the waves of change, radical change, but also the unfortunate soul-crushing waves of tragedy and disaster that keep happening in the world. And unfortunately, it looks like that's going to go on for a while because we are in one of these radical changes in the world. The ancient Greeks called it a kairos time, where time breaks and moments break and events are fragmented. And there's something about the human soul that feels that when it's happening. And now with modern communications, we feel what's happening all over the world. And what's happening all over the world is tragedy and upheaval, uncertainty, and radical change. And so it becomes a time of overwhelm, and then it becomes a time wherein we have to learn our own ways of handling overwhelm. Because if you deny it, it actually stiffens the wave and it comes worse. And so it becomes like, how do we become resilient enough and flexible enough? There's an old saying that says that smooth seas make bad sailors. Well, we're not going to have the smooth seas for a long time. Literally, the seas, the oceans themselves are turbulent now, as are all the events, or many of the events that we encounter locally and feel the effects of, like earthquakes can affect a long distance. Tragedies can also do that. And so we asked about, I was going to go through the litany of things that are overwhelming to me, but then it occurred to us that we might get a litany from everyone. If we were all in a room together, then that's what we would do. We would begin with where we are. So I want to read some of the responses to the question, which was, how do you feel overwhelmed in your life and in the world at this time? And here's what people said. Wars and so much suffering throughout the world, an overwhelming backlog of unexpressed grief and sorrow, the unkindness in the world and not being able to hold to truth from one moment to another, watching family members struggle with chronic anxiety, depression, and then substance abuse. The state of overwhelm feels related to my ideas of how things should be, or how I want them to be, in contrast to how they actually are. Someone else, as if echoing, says, and how they are is all systems seem to be collapsing at the same time. We are living through the collapse of institutions, and it's hard not to feel that or be affected by it. I fear in the United States we are living through the end of democracy and maybe the end of the human race and the earth in the climate crisis. So that's a common fear and an anxiety now. I just want to say, from the point of view of mythology, there isn't going to be an end of the human race. And the people that imagine that maybe the earth and nature is finished with humans, that's not the way it goes. Humans are integral to the dynamic and to the creative energy of the entire cosmos. So it's not going to be like that. Suffering of children in Ukraine, and especially in the Middle East. We're talking about in Hamas, in Gaza and in Israel, and all places affected by what's throwing that place upside down. Having felt like what was solid ground fall away beneath my feet and throwing me into the unknown future of the earth. Too much information, too much going on to be balanced. Living in a culture that is so disconnected from nature and disconnected from our own nature, that's a really important idea. Humans are not supposed to be disconnected from nature. Human culture is not supposed to be disconnected from nature. Human nature is secretly connected to nature. And one of the things that we're going to have to do in order to survive and in order to imagine a new world is reconnect our own inner nature to great nature. We'll come back to that. I'm currently overwhelmed with physical pain and limitations. Someone else echoing, I'm feeling all alone in my struggles. Someone else, overwhelmed by wanting to assist my young adult children as they begin to make their own way in the world, wondering what the future of the earth will be for them. Something to really realize is that young people now are walking into, they can't help but go forward. They may stumble, they may deny, they may refuse, but they're absorbing the trouble of the world. They're growing into that, and they're growing into the uncertainty that most people feel, and the kind of the sense that most ideas about the future are fatalistic. That's a very difficult thing to do, very rough on young people who are just trying to get connected to their own dreams. Watching my mother in late stages of dementia, too much of a divide of wealth, too much the poor suffer. That's another thing that's happening in the world. It's overtaken now by the wars and the other things going on, but there's been an ever-increasing divide between the rich and the poor, and that divide is felt in the human soul as a separation within people. Someone simply saying, not being able to make a difference feels overwhelming to them. Someone else talking about the United States saying, I feel overwhelmed by the mass shootings that keep recurring, as if acting out some kind of internal brokenness and some kind of homicidal, suicidal reaction to a world that's not making sense to a lot of people. Overwhelmed by the feeling of not being able to do enough to help Mother Earth and all species to thrive, and watching humanity sleep through this critical time. So part of the human soul is we are innately connected to nature. We're actually innately connected to the whole cosmos. And therefore, there's parts of us feel that we not only should do something, but we must be able to do something. And we're going to come back to that. The incongruence between what I feel and see and how the rest of the world around me seems to be moving as if everything is normal, business as usual, when everything is actually burning. So thank you for sending those in, and I'm sure there's more. I'll just get a sample of them. Just to get the sense of what we bring when we gather. Because everyone is carrying parts of the tragedies. Everyone is carrying parts of the overwhelm. Everyone is carrying parts of the disasters. That's the way we are. And that's why ancient people had things like songs to say, okay, we're going to stand on the ground now and try to find the unity in ourselves and trying to find a unity with each other in the midst of this. And one way that was done was through song. Another way it was done was through ritual. And later I will come back. I want to say some things about ritual, the idea that we need to reimagine ritual as a way of surviving, as a way of finding what I call sudden community so that we don't feel overwhelmed and alone all the time. Thank you for all the statements. So usually I also begin with a poem, and this is the poem that came to me earlier. It's a poem from Kabir. The guest is inside you. The guest is a reference to the sacred self, to the spirit of life. The guest is inside you and also inside me. You know, the sprout is hidden inside the seed. The butterfly hides inside the caterpillar. And here on earth, we are all struggling, and none of us has gone very far. So friends, let your fears and your apprehensions go and turn and look around inside. For there the daily sense of failure and anguish goes away. Even the damage I have done to myself fades when I sit firmly in that inner world. This is the old idea from most cultures. What we're really looking for is secretly within ourselves. He goes on. Sometimes I hear bells ringing that no one has shaken. Listen, the universe is shot through in all its parts by a single sort of love. Those who hope to be reasonable about all the troubles in the world will fail. The arrogance of reason has separated us from that love. With the word reason, you can already feel miles away. But how lucky Kabir is. His poems amount to one soul meeting another. These songs here are about letting go the banks of the river. They're about loss, about descending, about dying a little in order to live more. So lift the veil that obscures your heart, and there you will find what you are always looking for. So that's Kabir, the poetry of turning within, of looking within, not denying the world, but turning within in order to find the depth of oneself, in order that from there to re-enter the world, to recontact the world, to even reimagine that world. Because as the old poets knew, each person has eyes within their heart, and those eyes see the world the way that person is intended to see it. So the big move, or the main move that I'm interested in right now, is the turning inside. That repeating what, in a sense, was being said in the poem, what we're looking for is actually inside. And then, of course, there's the problem that we don't trust ourselves when we look inside. But nonetheless, that's what all the old knowers said. And it's time for us to know that again. So the stress in the world, which has always been there. The world has always had stress. It's always had earthquakes. It always has had disasters and all. But now it manifests more intensely as a collective anxiety, which adds to the sense of personal anxiety. And anxiety, when it's persistent over a period of time, can wear us down, and it can lead to despair. And as someone once said, the most common cause of despair is not being who you truly are. As if to say, the answer to overwhelm and the answer to not falling into despair is to becoming a more conscious version of one's own self. And I'll repeat something that I've been saying a lot lately. We can see our anxiety as a measure of the distance between the ego or the little self and the greater sense of self and soul deep within us. Our anxiety can be a measure of the distance we are from the deep self that is trying to get our attention, that has the capacity to center and ground us, that is, as if to say, the earth energy within us. When we find ourselves overwhelmed with anxiety and fears and on the road to despair, we wind up with a choice. We can either give in to the anxieties and fears and become a smaller self, or we can turn inwards in this ancient way and find meaningful connections to our deeper self and soul, because the deep self or soul, you can call it either one, does not suffer from overwhelm, but rather it has surprising resources and endless imagination. One of the things that happens when we get anxious and afraid is it shrinks our capacity for imagination. And the troubles that we're in throughout the world, which intensify the troubles in each person's life, cannot be solved by reason, as the poem was saying, but it needs real imagination, what I call vertical imagination. There's a way in which the world has become more connected horizontally through the World Wide Web, but that the vertical imagination, all the way up and all the way down, which was the extension, or would be the extension of the human life and the human soul, up to the heavens and down to the depths of the earth, that vertical imagination is often missing now. And there's no way to solve the nature of the problems that we all have inherited now without imagination. We're living, I'm repeating a little bit, but we're living through the shattering of paradigms and through the rattling of all the institutions that were intended to protect us. And that's an extreme challenge, to find a way to a world that rattles like that. And yet, all the old stories and all the old imaginations, cosmological imaginations of life, say that whatever shatters the common patterns also opens us up to psychological and even mythological levels of unusual depth that cannot be overwhelmed by the conditions of the world. In other words, it's not just that we need to turn inside, but also the deep self is trying to become more known at this time. So, in times of radical change and great uncertainty, we can find the exact conditions that can allow this opening and expanding, more conscious becoming of the deep self and the deep soul. I mean, that's maybe the core thing I'm trying to say, that the soul is not overwhelmed, the deep self is not overwhelmed, but they are trying to respond to what the ego cannot deal with and to what the committees throughout the world cannot conceive of.